Hey everybody, welcome back. It's probably been a couple weeks since you have seen my face, since we have been doing the declutter series on my channel. On top of that, I did not get to film as much as I wanted to. You know it's going to be an interesting week at work when you are at 30 hours by Tuesday. So it's just been one of those weeks. But I have still been playing with makeup. I've still been wearing makeup, if not every day, almost every day. And there are some palettes that I wanted to share with you. So this will be a weekly palettes video. We will just be covering the past couple of weeks instead of the past week. And so it'll be a little bit longer because I will have some more palettes to talk about. As always, I will have some pictures up here to show you so that you can see what I actually created with the looks I actually created with these palettes. But if you want to see the palettes I've used over the past couple of weeks, then stick around. I'm just going to scooch over here since so I can put up some pictures and you can still see the palettes. Now, there are 9 palettes to talk about this week, and the first one is actually the Pat McGrath Divine Rose 2. This is part of the Divine Rose 2 collection. This is the Eternal Eden Quad. Now, I actually created this look in my live stream. If you missed that, that is on my channel. It's live on my channel, but my eye was having such a meltdown that I wanted to really kind of revisit this palette and play around with it. And I've got to say, I'm really impressed with the quality of these mattes. These mattes are super soft and blendable, really, really gorgeous. And then this shade right here, which is called Earthly Delight. Oh my god, it is so stinking pretty. Now this shade in here called Temptation is really pretty. It's kind of one of those pinky to gold shifting shades. It was not, when compared to Earthly Delight, it was a little lackluster, but it is really pretty, and it's just gonna, I think it's nice to give you the versatility of using these mattes with something a little bit more in your face, or these mattes with something a little bit more appropriate for day to day. I did use all 4, so I used this one in my transition. This was to deepen up the crease. I used this shade on the outer lid, which is the Earthly Delight shade, and then I used Temptation on the inner corner, and I was really happy with the look. This is kind of a one-trick pony palette. I feel like you're going to get kind of the same looking look out of this palette every single time, but really, really pretty, and I was really, really impressed with those mattes. The next palette I used is actually a new brand to me, and this is the Carity Picante palette. I've never tried Carity before. I've heard like mixed things about mixed reviews about their quality, but I've got to say I was really impressed with the shadows that I used to create this look. So for this look, I did use, I'm reading my notes, guys, because it's been a couple weeks on some of these palettes and I can't remember what I did, so I always write it down. I used, for my transition, I went in with Dune, which is this really pretty mustardy shade. For my crease, I deepened it up with Pimento. My deeper crease, just to deepen up the crease, I went in with Flamenco. For the outer V, I went in with Bittersweet, which is this one right down here. And then for the lower lash line, I used Bittersweet and blended that out with Dune. And then for the lid, I used and then for my lid, I used Haley into Ember, so I kind of blended this on the middle to outer portion and this towards the inner portion, and then I used Fearless as my highlight, kind of inner corner highlighting shade, and I've got to say, I was really, really impressed with these. The mattes are super soft on these. They feel amazing. They blended out terrifically, so I'm just really impressed with this, and I'm excited to play around with this palette a little bit more. Again, it's got that ideal packaging for me. I really impressed with this palette. The next palette I used was also in my last weekly palettes video, and on top of that, I did do a review and a 2 looks 1 palette for this palette, and that is the Melt Blueprint palette. I've been talking about this palette a lot recently, and for this look, I kind of just mimicked what I did on the blue side with the neutrals, and I just used hammered in my crease to blend it out. I put Hot Wire and kind of in the outer V. I just kind of used this all over. So lower lash line, transition, outer V, deepened it up. I blended Hot Wire into Hammered, and then I blended Nailed into Hot Wired. And then for the inner portion of my lid and the inner corner, I did use Beaming. So it was a pretty simple look. I mean, it was one of those half cut creases, but it was, you know, just with these foreshadows, I thought it turned out really pretty. So if you want to see more thoughts on this Blueprint palette, then I will link that review up above so you can check it out. But yeah, I was really happy with this look. It took a little bit more work, but the end result was really gorgeous in my opinion. Next palette, this is another brand that I wanted to try this year, is Charlotte Tilbury. So for my first experience with Charlotte Tilbury, I picked up the Luxury Palette color-coded eyeshadows in Uptown Girl, and I really liked this. It was a really soft, simple, sophisticated, put together type of look that was kind of, I threw on in like 5 minutes, I mean, or less. It was just awesome. So it's just, these don't have names, so it's, what is it? Prime, Pop, Enhance, and Smoke? That can't be right. Maybe it's Prime, Pop, Enhance, and Smoke, I guess is what it is. So essentially what I did is I just laid this one down as my transition. I deepened everything up with this shade right here. I used this one all over the lid, and then this one right here I used in the inner corner. So this shade I'm not like super impressed with. This one was really pretty, this one right here all over the lid, but these two mattes were really gorgeous. You're not going to get a lot of depth out of this palette. Again, this is just going to be something that you just kind of throw a look together. It's going to be simple. It's going to be very toned down, very sophisticated. And I, you know, is what I was expecting when I picked up this palette. So overall, I'm really happy with the look. Daniel really liked this one, oddly enough. He really liked the look that I got out of this palette. And I think it's just because it was so toned down, which he likes my kind of crazier over the top looks, but he, you know, it was just so sophisticated and understated, and I think he's just not used to seeing that from me. So this one was really good as well. All right, the next palette I used is from Huda Beauty, and this was the Sand Haze palette. Now this one, I swatched the shimmers in here, and I'm going to swatch them for you. And you know, when I sat down to use this palette, and they just weren't like, you know, they weren't doing it for me. They're not bad by any means. They're just kind of, you know, they're just kind of okay shimmers, but they weren't really like grabbing my attention. So I just decided to do an all matte look with this palette. So I took this matte right here and just laid it all over my eye from my, you know, setting my primer from my lash line to my brow bone. I used this color right here to just lay down as my transition. I deepened up my crease with this color right here, and then I just put this kind of in the outer V, deepened up the crease, lower lash line with this deepest shade right here, and then I just put this one all over the lid, and then just popped this right in the inner corner again, just to lighten everything up. So I did use all of the mattes in here, and the mattes I really liked, whereas the shimmers were just not doing it for me. I feel like these mattes are really gorgeous, and I got a really beautiful look out of them. I feel they were really easy to use. It was a really quick look. They blended out super fast, super easy. So while the shimmers in here are not like, weren't my cup of tea, again, that's not fair to say because I haven't put them on the eye yet. The mattes in here are really beautiful. I kind of wish she would come out with some all matte, those little mini palettes. I don't think she has, because the mattes are usually what does it for me in those palettes. The next palette was also in my last weekly palettes video, and that's because I'm just reviewing this. I'm in the process of testing this out, and that's the Norns palette. And again, I created an additional 4 looks with this palette. This palette is already just looking all kinds of beat up, and I was really happy with the looks. I think after I did my initial 5, I was able to sit down and kind of create 4 more looks that were a little bit more put together and that I was really happy with. And I'll just kind of pop these up here because I've used all of these. I'm not going to get too in depth because I am going to do a tutorial and review on this palette. So again, just really interesting palette. I know I've kind of been teasing this tutorial. This is a new brand to me. It's a new formula, and it kind of took me a little while to kind of acclimate myself to the palette. So that's why I keep talking about it, and I've tried it out so extensively before trying it, but that review, I'm hoping that review should be up either this week or beginning of next week. So either probably like Wednesday, Friday, or Monday of next week. But yeah, I did use this one quite a bit, and I will pop, again, just flash those looks up there to give you a kind of a preview of what I did in my review video. I can talk. All right, the next palette I used is another palette from Certify. After my first experience with the Dynasty palette, I went back on and purchased the other 2 palettes. I think there's one that I'm missing that was just sold out, but you know, I've got plenty, I'm not complaining. But this is the Affinity palette, and this is an all matte palette, all warm toned, very much a sunset palette. So for my look with this one, in my transition, I went with, what did I do? I I laid down Ritz, and then I kind of went over that with Zara. Just to kind of really get into my crease, I went in with Shazia, I believe is how you say this. So, and then just to go kind of get deeper into my crease, I went in with Shazia. To deepen up that crease a little bit more, I went in with Farrah. The outer V, I went in with Henna, and this was kind of outer V and very outer portion of the lid. I also used henna along my lower lash line. Then for the lid, I wanted to do kind of a rainbow or a sunset rainbow kind of look. So I used Salma on the inner corner, and then I went in with Sonia. Yeah, I went in with Sonia. And then I blended that into Onika. So blended that into the henna. And I was really happy with this look. It was before work, and this is kind of a detailed look. So I wasn't like super thorough. The liner was a little messy, and I didn't completely blend Onika into Farrah. But I was really happy with the look. The mattes they're a little dry to the touch, but they blended really well. I had a little bit of trouble with my blend with Ritz and Zara, just blending everything out, but I just think that was because I didn't set my primer, and I did my eyeshadow a little bit different that day. But so far I'm really liking the look I got out of it, and I was really happy with how it blended for mattes. I feel like I got a really nice blend. I feel like the colors were really vibrant on the eye. I didn't put any kind of special base down underneath, just my normal primer. It was either the Urban Decay Primer Potion or the Lorac Behind the Scenes, or it might have just been my concealer that day. So yeah, I was really impressed with this little palette. So, and I really liked the look. It was like, I think, Daniel's favorite of the week, and it was just very vibrant. Again, I had minimal fallout with this one, so I was really impressed with this one. I'm excited to try some different things with this palette. All right guys, we got 2 more palettes. So the next one is the Natasha Denona Trio Chrome, and I really enjoyed this palette. And I just went essentially with this top row. So what I did is I just went in with Androdite in my transition. I went in with Vert to deepen it up and kind of really blend into Androdite and deepen up that crease. I deepened up my crease and my outer V with Scrap. I also put Scrap along the lower lash line and blended it out with Vert, and then blended it out with Androdite to just get a really nice blend on the lower lash line. I then put Ion all over the lid, and I covered it. I topped it with Scarab, which the shade is beautiful, super pretty. And then for my inner corner, I did Androdite again, and I was really happy with this look. Blended out beautifully, really interesting colors. Even for greens, I don't have greens like this in my collection, so I was really happy with this look. Very happy with it. And then finally, for my look today, I used my Scott Barnes Glamazon palette. Now, when I ordered this, it was labeled the Atelier palette, but when I got it, the cover on the front, but when I got it, it was labeled Glamazon. So that's what we're gonna go with. We're gonna go with the Glamazon palette. It doesn't list it anywhere on the actual palette. Oh yeah, it does. It says Glamazon Natural number 2. And this is what I used to create this look today, and I'm super happy, super impressed. I got this when he was having like a 30% off flash sale, because this palette's expensive. It is not cheap. So this palette is gorgeous. So it is a more neutral kind of palette with very, not subtle, but like gentle leaning color themes, like that are not just neutral. You could definitely do a neutral look with this, but then you have some blues, you have some purples, you have some greens, and it's just gorgeous. The quality of this palette blew me away. Mattes blended out just so easily. Shimmers were really pretty. They're not going to be the most in-your-face shimmers, but they are really gorgeous, and I think they do just show up on the eye beautifully. I didn't even wet these down today, which you guys know I do that all the time. So what I did for this look is I used Muse as my transition, which looks like almost nothing in the pan, but when you build it up, even with a fluffy brush, you start to get a really beautiful grayish purple color that's relatively opaque on the eye. It was really gorgeous. And then I went in with Serving Looks to just go into my crease. I deepened up my crease and my outer V with Drama. I also used Drama right along the lower lash line, blended it out with Serving Looks, and finally just blended it down with Muse to get that nice gradient. And then for my lid, I went in with On the List, which is a really pretty kind of brown to blue to red kind of, one of those kind of shadows. I went in on my kind of the inner portion of my list with the inner portion of my lid with Talk to My Agent, and then in my inner corner I used plain white tea. So I love the theme of these. It's all very model theme. If you watch America's Next Top Model, or if you used to, you'll recognize a lot of these kind of terms, which I really like. So I thought this was just a fabulous palette. I cannot wait to dig in more with this palette and try more looks, and I am definitely interested in picking up his other palettes because the quality of this is phenomenal. Alright everybody, so those are the palettes that I have used over the past 2 weeks. I hope this was fun for you. Let me know down below, what have you been using? Is there one thing that you just can't put down? Are you switching it up every day? I'm always interested to hear. But as always guys, thank you so much for hanging out and talking about makeup with me. I hope y'all have an amazing day, have a rockin' week, and I will see you next time. Bye.